कैसे हैं आप सब लोग? गुड. सो वी स्टार्ट टुडे डे 6. 5 दिन हम लोगों को हो गए हैं गीता सुनते हुए और आज वी आर ऑन डे 6 and I am
1/3 of the journey.
1/3 of the journey. Yes, and I am sure all of you are enjoying it. So we start today day 6 with the meditation, and then we will invite Ram Bhai to guide us with the insights of Bhagavad Gita. Over to you, Swati Mehra ji. Thank you.
सुप्रभात सभी को. Take a few deep breaths to center yourself. Sit comfortably. I close my eyes if I wish. Hands open, palms towards the heaven, arms slightly bent, open in a receiving position. I relax all the muscles around my eyes, behind my eyes. I take a few deep breaths in and out, in and out. Breathing naturally, I go within and invoke the divine ray of universal love. Breathing deeply, I visualize myself near the sea. The sand tickles my toes, and the waters of the sea kisses them. As I gaze upwards to feel the early morning warmth of the sun, I see a ray of brilliant white light descending from the up above. In this ray of light, I now see a round, golden, pink ball of light floating down towards me. The ball of light first touches my crown chakra, situated at the top of the head. The light cleanses the crown chakra. Slowly and gradually, the chakra starts blooming petal by petal and fully flowers into 1,000 petaled purple lotus. I breathe in and I see the golden ball of light now moving and entering my third eye chakra. It enters the third eye and cleanses it of its blockages. As the light enters the chakra, the blockages are removed and the chakra opens up in a bright indigo flower with 2 petals. The golden ball of light now moves and descends into my throat chakra. It cleanses my throat chakra of any blockages related to communication and expressing the love that I wish to express, which I withheld due to conscious or subconscious memories Allow the light to work upon this chakra. Slowly and gradually, it opens up in a bright blue 16 petaled flower. I breathe in and out. The golden pink ball of light now moves and touches my heart chakra, enters into it slowly, gradually cleansing it of any fears related to love and compassion. Illuminated with this golden pink light of the divine, the chakra is completely cleansed and opens up in a bright green or pink 12 petaled flower. All my life, my soul seeks love, love which is the light of my soul. In this feeling of soul light, there is a force that radiates the divine happiness of universal love. In the cycles of the nature, when the sun meets the moon, the breeze that flows through a child's hair, caressing its cheeks, is love. When a child lovingly smiles at us in all purity and innocence, that is love. When a powerful energy transforms my negative thoughts and sad moods into happier ones, that is love. When my spouse supports me in my moments of weakness and helps me to pick myself up, that is love. When I forgive and make up, when I fulfill my commitments and promises, that is love. And I am in touch with this divine ray of consciousness, which is pure love, pure universal love. This ray of divine energy helps me to integrate universal love. It helps me to understand that without love, no good can exist. It acts and interacts to create life in us and all around us. Love is what holds us together. Love is what helps us to sustain. Love is what keeps us going. I feel this energy of love expanding and reaching out to each and every cell of my body, filling all the inter and intracellular spaces. The whole of the body on the inside is filled with this golden pink light. Each organ is smiling, touched by this vibration of love. The light now moves back to the heart, condenses into a ball, and moves down, entering the solar plexus. The solar plexus is situated 2 fingers above my navel. It enters my sacral chakra and cleanses it of any fears related to relationships and creativity. It cleanses within me memories of sadness, depression, despair, and bring to my consciousness joy, happiness, harmony, and love. I now see the chakra opening up in all its orange radiance. The 6 petals are spinning and it is beautiful. I watch this mesmerized. The golden ball of light now moves and touches my root chakra, my center for action in this concrete world, my manifestations situated at the base of the spine, touched by this light of love. It opens up in a bright red 4-petal flower. The golden ball of light moves down my legs and goes into the earth. It grounds me deeply and provides me with a connection to the nourishing aspects of Mother Earth. I now bring my arms up to hug myself and sitting gently, and I gently sway to this inner music of love that I now hear within my own self. Hugging myself, I sway gently, gently, gently. I continue to hug myself for some more time, swaying to the rhythm of my inner music. I let go of images, if any. I rub my palms and put them on my eyes. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Coming back to the here and now, to this now where we get insights from Ram into the mystical song of the Lord, the Gita. Welcome back.
Namaskar, good morning, Subhodaya, Bhati, बहुत shukriya. Thank you. Let's begin this our quest, our journey into the Bhagavad Gita by invoking the blessings of the Lord. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Please bless us all to find fulfillment in this journey of ours. Ladies and gentlemen, so today we are on the 6th chapter and how time flies. The first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, you're all aware of the fact that, the Bhagavad Gita is 18 chapters, 700 verses. The first 6 chapters are really about knowing yourself, what is selfless action. And, Krishna, first of all, addresses that particular conditioning issue of Arjuna and of all of us through Arjuna. And he's going ahead now with this entire quest. So this particular chapter, if you recall in the last chapter, we were talking entirely about what is selfless action and how can we practice selfless action. And this time, he's talking in terms of the fact that the mind is very restless. How do you tame the mind? what are you going to be doing in terms of taming the entire mind? So this is a lot about Dhyana Yoga, this particular chapter, and how do you actually bring the mind under control. This is an interesting chapter. It's about 47 odd shlokas. As usual, we will pick up a few and we'll try and use that to thread the main learnings of this particular chapter into a whole. So Krishna starts off this entire chapter by, he continues where he left off in the 5th chapter. He continues to talk to Arjuna. And he tells him, he continues with this whole journey about sannyasa and yoga, karma sannyasa and karma yoga, which is what he was talking about the whole of last chapter. And he continues with it in this particular chapter. So he continues to explore those thoughts, saying, is there any difference at all between the two? Are they really two sides of the same coin? The fact that you can actually practice sannyasa or you can practice yoga. But for both, you need to do it in the form of performing selfless action in a way that you are, not getting attached to the entire fruits of this action. So when you actually renounce it, then you are practicing both. So both of them, in many ways, are really, really two sides of the same coin. And the coin is the ability to rise above being attached to the outcomes of the action that we perform. So if we can actually, that is the central message till now, that is it possible for us to perform actions without getting overly attached to the fruits of these actions that are bound to happen. You see, there is no action that can happen without a fruit, no action that can happen without a result. You will get a result, there is no doubt about that. But is it possible for us to rise above the attachment to those manifestations that will happen, to the outcomes of the actions that are bound to be there? And if we can do that, then the two sides of the same coin, that is of not being attached to those manifestations or the fruits of that action, could be karma sannyasa or could be karma yoga. So we pick up the threads today with verse 1, and Srini, with your help, we'll do verse 1. And I must really congratulate, the IIT Kanpur and Swami Brahmananda ji for this absolutely divine rendering of the Gita.
षष्ठोऽध्यायः श्रीभगवानुवाच अनाश्रितः कर्मफलम् कार्यं कर्म करोति यः स सन्न्यासी च योगी च न निरग्निर्न चाक्रियः.
Anurag?
श्री भगवान बोले, कर्म फल का आश्रय न लेकर जो कर्तव्य कर्म करा वही सन्यासी तथा ये है, और केवल अग्नि का त्याग करने वाला सन्यासी नहीं होता तथा केवल क्रियाओं का त्याग करने वाला योगी नहीं होता.
Okay. So this is his whole message, that if you perform those duties without desiring the results of those actions that you do, whether you're a sannyasa or whether you're a yoga, you're actually the same thing. The point is that if you can get into that zone, that I am not really going to be involved with the manifestations of the outcomes of my action, and I am really going to focus on the action, and I'm going to renounce therefore the fruits of this action. Now this becomes a very important theme for Krishna here to Arjuna, because what he's trying to tell all of us is exactly this, that look, if you can remain free from the attachment that is bound to happen. So, sometimes you may wonder, saying, but how can I not be attached to that? How can I not be attached to my son? How can I not be attached to my daughter? How can I not be attached to my house? How can I not be attached to my business? Is it possible? Of course, you're going to be attached. There is no question about that. Because when you perform something and you get a particular result, then you're going to be bound to be attached to that. But is it possible for us to figure this out, saying that it is really our senses, the 5 senses that we keep talking about, that are involved with this entire thing? So is it, the whole idea here is, can you drive a certain harmony? Can you drive a certain harmony between your inner self, your Atman, okay, your outer self, your body, the action that you're performing, the manifestations of those actions, and the fact that you're going to be getting some fruits. So if we can align these 5 things together, which is your inner self, your Atman, the body, okay, which obviously is experiencing through it the various senses, whatever is happening in the world, the action that you perform, the manifestations of that particular action, and the results that you're bound to get. If there is a certain alignment that can happen here, then Krishna tells us that, look, it is possible that you can be in harmony with your inner self, that there is no conflict then between what your body is doing, body is experiencing, what the actions that you perform, the manifestations, the results, and more importantly, your inner self. You see, this chapter is entirely about getting that harmony into our life, because when there is no harmony there, so at the root of this is your inner self, your Atman, because if you don't have that harmony there, then the rest of it is obviously not going to be in harmony. If you remember in school, when we would do the high school physics and you do the pendulum, and when you drop the pendulum here, now that is the inner self. The minute every other pendulum in that line will get impacted and everything starts moving. And that's the whole point. So is it possible for this to be in harmony, and therefore every other part of that pendulum called life can become in harmony? Srini, will we go to verse number 6, please?
बन्धुरात्मात्मनस्तस्य येनात्मैवात्मनाजितः अनात्मनस्तु शत्रुत्वे वर्तेतात्मैव शत्रुवत्।
जिसने अपने आप से अपने आप को जीत लिया है, उसके लिए आप ही अपना बंधु है, और जिसने अपने आप को नहीं जीता है, ऐसे अनात्मा का आत्मा ही शत्रुता में शत्रु की तरह बर्ताव करता है। अर्थात जैसे दूसरा शत्रु अपना अनिष्ट करने वाला होता है, वैसे ही वह आप ही अपना अनिष्ट करने में लगा रहता है।
So look at what he's trying to tell us. If you've conquered the mind, अगर आप अपने मन को काबू में रखे हो, तो फिर वो आपका सबसे बड़ा दोस्त है। और अगर आपका मन जो है वो काबू में नहीं है, वो आपका सबसे बड़ा शत्रु बन जाता है। तो इसका मतलब क्या है? That when we talked about this harmony earlier, ये एक harmony में होना चाहिए, because if you can align all of these aspects of your life in one line, then obviously you've got a thing which is going. So I keep saying the point of this particular verse is very important, that you are your best friend, you can also be your worst enemy. आप आपके सबसे बड़े दोस्त हो सकते हो, या आप आपके सबसे बड़े शत्रु हो सकते हो, क्योंकि अगर आप आपके मन को काबू में नहीं रखेंगे और उसको अपने आत्मा, if you remember last time we said make your mind a slave of your heart, अगर इसको नहीं करवाओगे आप, then your inner voice will get shut out. Last chapter we examined this whole question of your inner voice, saying allow your inner voice to come out, because if that inner voice is not coming out, then obviously you're not in a great position to be in. And this is this whole challenge of this alignment that I keep talking about. That when you're working on something, when you're working on your higher purpose in life, okay, if there is an alignment that happens, then there is absolutely no confusion in all the other stuff that you do. So it is important for you to dwell within. It is important for you to look within and say, this is what is my inner voice. This is what I would like to do. This is what is my Atma. Because when that gets into alignment, obviously you're making it your friend. Okay? If you don't, then it can be your worst enemy. And the kind of disastrous consequences that can happen, if that so happens, is something that we're all extremely aware of. So he goes on to talk about this fact that, you need to develop in verse 7, verse 8, etc. He goes on to talk about the fact that we need to have developed this ability to listen to our inner voice. हमारी जो अंतरात्मा है, उससे एक आवाज निकलती है, उस आवाज को अपने को पहचानना चाहिए और उस आवाज को सुनना चाहिए. So this whole chapter, for instance, is going on. He goes on to talk about how do you meditate, how do you actually figure out a way, what is the process that you can follow to make sure that you listen to that inner voice within us. You see, the problem is this, that we get so attached to the play of opposites in our life, that in this play of opposites, we get completely lost. So there is hot, there is cold, there is light, there is darkness, there is pleasure, there is pain. And in all of this interplay of opposites, somewhere that inner voice that is there gets confused. On which way should I swing? Should I swing towards pleasure? Should I swing towards pain? Should I swing towards darkness? Should I swing towards light? Should I swing towards cold? Should I swing towards heat? All of these opposites, the interplay that happens, the inner voice somehow, you allow your inner voice to lose control, and therefore you start thinking, ये दुविधा जो होती है, ये मन की दुविधा जो होती है, यहीं से होती है. So he is now going to tell us how can we develop that particular knowledge on what is good for us, and where does that wisdom actually comes from? Okay, how do we develop the fact that we can start giving rein to our inner voice and start treating seemingly opposites in the same way? Now, this is a tough thing for all of us, but if we recognize the fact that there are always at any point of time going to be two options available to us, okay, there will always be two options available to us, and that is this interplay of opposites that are going to be there. Where does the duvidha happen? The duvidha happens when we are forced to choose one or two. And that is the time when we start choosing the easy option. And when you choose that easy option, then you figure out that you're neither here nor are you there. And that is the challenge that Krishna is addressing us through the next particular verse that we've picked up for you. Srini, verse number 8, please. And look at the beauty of this particular verse that he talks about.
ज्ञान विज्ञान तृप्तात्मा कूटस्थो विजितेन्द्रियः युक्त इत्युच्यते योगी समलोष्टाश्मकाञ्चनः.
Raj ji?
जो योगी ज्ञान और विज्ञान से तृप्त है, जो विकार रहित कूटस्थ और जितेंद्रिय है, वह योगी मिट्टी, पत्थर और सुवर्ण को समान समझने वाला होता है. अर्थात उसकी दृष्टि में मिट्टी, पत्थर और सोना सब समान है. वह परमात्मा से युक्त कहलाता है.
So, Shri, just hold the slide for a minute. So look at what he is talking about, the jnana and the vijnana, which is the knowledge and the wisdom. If you can get that particular knowledge and that wisdom to work for you, okay, which, here in this particular interpretation, we're talking of knowledge and discrimination, knowledge and wisdom, the wisdom to discriminate, okay? And if that knowledge and wisdom have conquered your senses, conquered your mind, and you remain undisturbed. Now here, it's a very interesting thing. You see, in the whole of the Bhagavad Gita, he keeps talking about certain aspects, dirt, stones, and gold. So you may wonder, saying, how can you handle dirt, stones, and gold at the same time? How can you handle, what's the meaning of this whole point? But look at it from this perspective, that if we develop the knowledge and the wisdom to overcome this instant gratification mode that we have all got into right now, that we need an instant gratification. Our whole world is now run by this whole problem of instant gratification. We want an instant gratification. There is something that you do, you must get an immediate result. So I'm saying something, I want immediate agreement. I'm saying something, I want everybody to fall in line. This instant gratification is really what causes a lot of problem. So that is a very temporary kind of a nature. And he's saying that, look, can you actually rise above and see whether it is earth, whether it's stone or gold as the same? Very difficult, right? But then look at it from this perspective. To a farmer, the earth is the most important part of his life because he grows his crops. A sculptor The stone is something which takes life. And he takes a piece of stone and he creates something which is a beautiful, he makes sure that that stone becomes a beautiful sculpture. And to a goldsmith, the gold that he has got, he makes sure that he creates into a beautiful ornament. So everything has its place in life. It is just that we need to develop that wisdom and that discrimination to figure out how are we going to make sure that we can treat everything alike. So this knowledge, this wisdom that we have, which is within us, is it possible for us to make sure that we do that? And he goes on, in verse 9, 10, 11, etc., in which he says, look, how do you handle, again, the point is that you need to develop this ability to figure out how are you going to handle well-wishers, how are you going to handle friends, how are you going to handle enemies in the same way. So whether it is whether it is some earth, whether it is a clod of earth, or whether it is a stone or gold or a well-wisher or a friend or an enemy, can you handle them all alike? Can you develop this wisdom that everybody has its place in life? That every person that you come across will be the same. And therefore, he uses a very interesting word, which is samabuddhi vishishyate. That is, if we can do something by which all the people that you come across, you're going to be handling in the same way. And saying that, look, in this process of life, okay, and this is a very interesting point that he talks about, saying that, look, how do you achieve this one-pointedness in life? Okay, the Swami Acharya Vinoba Bhave keeps talking about this in his wonderful book. How do you practice this one-pointedness that is so very important? Okay, so the challenge is this for us. I am working on my Swadharma. I am working on my higher self. I am aligning my Atman, my body, the mind, the senses, the action, the outcome, the results, the manifestation, the result. I am aligning everything in this process. And along comes another person that I'm going to be interacting with. Whether it is a friend, whether it is a foe, whether it is a family member, whether whatever. Now, that person, if that person's Swadharma is not aligned, then you need to ask yourself a simple question. What is the purpose of my life? Is it to align somebody else's Swadharma, or is it to continue to do what I want to do? And that is how he is trying to tell us that, look, if you have to get this one-pointedness, recognize the fact that this is something that will happen to you, that you will have different experiences in life. But you continue to pursue whatever is important to you and keep that uppermost in your life. Okay? So we move on now to verse 11 and 12. And Srini, with your permission, 11 and 12, please.
शुचौ देशे प्रतिष्ठाप्य स्थिरमासनमात्मनः नात्युच्छ्रितं नाति नीचं शैलाजिनकुशोत्तरम्.
Will you play verse 12 also, Srini, because both go together?
अत्रैकाग्रं मनः कृत्वा यतचित्तेन्द्रियक्रियः उपविश्यासने युञ्ज्यात् योगमात्मविशुद्धये.
Can you go back to the slide 11, because I'd like Anurag to read the Anwad, please. Anurag, slide 11, please.
हाँ जी. साफ सुथरे स्थान में अपने को स्थिर आसन में बैठाए, जो न बहुत ऊंचा हो न ही बहुत नीचा. पहले कुशा की चटाई, ऊपर हिरण की खाल, उसके ऊपर वस्त्र बिछाकर उस पर बैठे.
Okay, so Srini, just hold the slide. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, Anurag, go ahead.
स्थिर आसन में बैठे चित्त और इंद्रियों की क्रियाओं को रोककर आप शुद्धि के लिए मन को एक स्थान पर केंद्रित करके योग से जुड़ें।
Okay, so just go back, Srini, to slide 11, please. Right. So how do you practice this ability to get that wisdom and that knowledge that you have to be completely focused? You know, there is this whole concept of me time that we talk about right now. That it is very, very important for each one of us to figure out a certain me time, a certain time that is very sacred to each one of us. And look at what he's telling us here, that, you know, try and figure out a place to sit. Okay. Try and figure out a place where you can do this. Can you do this in the middle of a train? No, you can't. So can you figure out a place for having this me time? So here his example is very simple. He says, pick up a particular seat in a nice, comfortable place. That sanctified place is a nice, comfortable place. And place things there that are not going to disturb you. The kusha grass, the deer skin, and the cloth. Why? Because, you know, you can then be absolutely comfortable there. Okay? Neither too high nor too low. Go to the next slide, Shani, please. Verse 12. Okay? And how do you do that? You sit there. Okay? And you focus on the meditation with one pointed concentration, controlling all other thoughts and activities. Ladies and gentlemen, what a great lesson this is for all of us. In our day-to-day life today, the biggest tragedy I believe that has happened to all of us is this, that we have zero me time. From the time we get up in the morning till the time we go to sleep, there is something or the other that keeps coming in our way. There is some input, there is some WhatsApp, there is some, TV, there is some newspaper, there is something. We are in an overload right now. And therefore, we just don't have any me time at this point of time. So what is Krishna's lesson to Arjuna and to all of us? Pick a place. Choose a particular place. Set a pattern in your life. What is that particular place? Pick a place, pick a time. Can it be a particular garden that you can walk in? Great. Pick a time. Can it be 6 a.m. in the morning? Can it be 6:30? Can it be 7? Can it be in the evening at 7 o'clock? Pick a place, pick a time. Set a pattern and do something at that time to give yourself that me time that you require. Whether it is a walk, whether it is yoga, whether it is meditation, whether, listening to a song, do whatever it is that is required to unwind yourself and make sure that at that point of time, you can start focusing on what you need to do. Now, why do you need to do this? Why do you need to set a place? Why can't you do it at any point of time, at any given place, anything? Of course you can. There's nothing, if you're one of those blessed people, then surely you can do it wherever you feel like. But why should you pick a particular place, a time, a pattern? That is because of the fact that if you do, if you're going to go for a walk, let us say, on a daily basis between 6 and 7, but if you're going to be going to a new place to walk every day, nothing wrong. But then you will be lost in discovering what is coming next. But if you're walking in the same place and there is a certain pattern to that, then your body gets used to that, the mind gets used to that, and slowly but surely the mind starts focusing on what you need to do. Whether it is a meditation routine, whether it is a yoga practice, whether it is going to the gym, whatever it is that you want to do, by which in a set fixed pattern, you gift yourself that me time. And I advocate this to all of you. Take 15 minutes, take 20 minutes, take 30 minutes, take whatever time you can, but just shut the world out at that point of time. Just focus on you, focus on what you want to do and how do you do it. But keep it minimalistic. No clutter. Don't get into this entire clutter of music, of trying to listen to different kinds of music. If you want to listen to music, then listen to the same kind of a song day in and day out. It doesn't matter, because that music then becomes part of your life. So keep it minimalistic. Be with yourself. That is a gift that you can actually give to yourself. And that's a phenomenal gift that you can give. Enjoy your own company. Okay? fix your thoughts, allow your mind to concentrate on what needs to be done. Figure this out for yourself. Make sure that your mind is with you, and make sure that your entire mind is, you've got your thoughts fixed, you on your high purpose, and that is the way that you can start creating a mindset of peace and happiness. Because that is the time that you are giving to yourself. That's a gift that you're giving to yourself and to your Swadharma. And he says, look, if you're able to do this, then it is possible for you to achieve what you want. In the same chapter, in verse 16, 17, 18, 19, he talks about, okay, what can come in the way of your doing this? Is there anything that you're going to be, it's all great, you want to do this, but is there anything that can come into your way to do this? Now, what I'm going to tell you is a little bit of a, little bit of a oxymoron for tablers, but then, well, this is what he's trying to tell us. And he says, look, the dangers that can come in this is eating too much or eating too little, or sleeping too much or sleeping too little. Now, we've been used to a particular lifestyle, but I think it's time for us all to figure out a way of saying, all right, we've done what we've done, but now maybe it's a good time for us to figure out, saying, let's bring some moderation in life. So what he's trying to tell us is this, that keep a certain amount of moderation, because anything in an excess can lead to an imbalance. And when that imbalance happens, obviously this alignment that we are talking about is going to go out of action, is going to go out, is not going to work. So this particular enabling state of the mind which is required, by which those distractions can be minimalized. And that is how you can do it. So do you need to do it for the whole day? Well, not. Maybe for just half an hour a day, maybe just for 1 hour a day, if you can do it, I think that's a great thing. So he also goes on to talk in verse 18 and 19. He talks about the lamp that does not flicker because of a lack of wind. So what do you do with the lamp? If there is a wind, you put on a glass on that lamp so that that lamp cannot flicker. And that glass that you fit onto that lamp is quite literally the lamp of wisdom and discrimination and knowledge. So that if that lamp does not flicker, if the flame does not flicker of that lamp, then obviously you're one-pointed and you're being focused on what you need to be doing. So he goes on to explore this whole thing as to say, how do you stay the course? How do you make sure that you don't allow all these distractions to come in your way? Okay. And again, he gives us lots and lots and lots of examples for that. From verse 20 to 24, he talks about various things that you can do to make sure that your mind is directed towards your inner self and your own inner calling. And he calls this by being established in a state of happiness. That you need to constantly figure out a way of being in a state of happiness, of being in a place that, you need to be grateful. And I think yesterday Reshma talked to us about how she is bringing greatness into her life and how you can continue to be grateful for what you have. So if you're able to do this, if you're able to practice this, of being grateful, of making sure that even if the mind were to wander from place to place, you make sure that the mind is in a particular place. Handle all these opposites that will come in your way and handle them in a way that you continue to focus on what you need to focus. So develop this particular practice is what he's saying, telling us that this state of mind, this satisfaction, this gratefulness, this happiness is something that will make sure that we are able to handle the seeming opposites that are bound to happen. Okay. Remember one thing, that if you do practice all that he's trying to tell us, there is a good possibility that you will have a chance of figuring out what works and what does not work. Okay. So how do you control the mind? How do you so he says, let it be one-pointed. And how can you make sure that your mind will work for you? So we move on to verse number 27, Srini.
प्रशान्तमनसं ह्येनं योगिनं सुखमुत्तमम् उपैति शान्तरजतम् ब्रह्मभूतमकल्मषम्
Right?
शांत और रमे हुए मन से ही योगी को उत्तम सुख की अनुभूति होती है। रजस के शांत होने पर आंतरिक क्लेशों से मुक्त हुए को ब्रह्म की अनुभूति होती है।
So this is the point. If you can calm yourself, even for that 1 hour in a day, even for that half an hour in a day, then you can start embracing happiness in a larger way. And if you can take that half an hour, that me time that we talked about, and if you can make it into a 45-minute, from 15 minutes, if you can take it to half an hour, from half an hour, you can take it to 45 minutes, slowly but surely what you're doing is this, that you are now trying to figure out a way in which that calmness can start radiating from you and is required. Why is that required? If your mind is calm and is focused, then the kind of thoughts that you will get are enabling thoughts. If your mind is restless, then obviously you're not going to be getting enabling thoughts in your life. And if you don't get those enabling thoughts, and if your thoughts are all over the place, if they are scattered everywhere, then you are not going to be proceeding and doing what you need to be doing in life. And therefore, Krishna's lesson is very clear to all of us, saying that, look, keep that calm mind, allow it to get those, enabling thoughts. And then he goes on to talk very interestingly as to how do you carry people along on this journey of yours, okay? That when you realize that everyone around you is virtually the same, it is a calm mind that helps you understand that in everybody there is the same Atman, the same inner self, the same higher calling. As I said, some people have realized this, some people have not. If you can realize that everyone around you, whether it is your family, whether it is your employees, whether it is your 41ers club, whether it is your table, everybody is the same. That everybody has that inner Brahman within. And if you can start developing this whole attitude of becoming an inverted paranoid, of saying that, look, I am here to help others achieve what they need to be achieving in life. And if that inner paranoid of yours can start radiating and can start moving forward, then obviously you're figuring out how to get things done. So he goes on to explain to us from verse 39 to 32 that, look, there is a huge amount of greatness in everybody, and start respecting that. That every human being is great. Don't treat anybody that in a way that person is not great, that person is not meant for greatness. That is a fallacy that we can get into in life. To start believing that I am the greatest and nobody around me is as good as I am. And he talks extensively about that. Everybody but everybody is equal. Everybody has the potential to achieve their swadharma. So if we start respecting that fact, and if we start recognizing that people have it in them, and it is our duty to help people achieve that. Now guess what happens there? Today we are talking about, especially in the next normal that we're going to get to, we're talking that the greatest business strategy that you can actually adopt right now is collaboration. And how can you start collaborating between earlier collaboration was between likes, but now can we collaborate between unlikes? Is it possible for us to collaborate between unlikes? Is it possible for us to set up a process? And this is something which is very important. This whole verse 29 to 32 talks about how we need to develop the ability to respect others. Because remember again this, that if you don't respect others, and again going back to the example of the pendulum, that you're trying to do something, but there are other people out there, and if they are not aligned with you, then obviously you're not going to be creating music. It is something which is very important. It's like playing in an orchestra. If you see an orchestra that is playing on stage, everybody in that orchestra has a certain role to play. There may be a lead singer, there may be a lead guitarist, there may be a lead, sarod vadan, or there may be a lead tablist, or there may be a lead flutist. But everybody else has an equal role to play. And only when all of them play together, and that person playing the flute may have just one piece of 10 seconds or 15 seconds in a 3-minute song. But that one piece of 10 minutes, of 10 seconds, or 15 seconds is an extremely important piece. And therefore, that also has to fit into the grand plan. And in the same way, from verse 29 to 32, Krishna tells us that, look, try and figure out how are you going to make sure that everybody is equal, and how are you going to get your mind to focus on this? How do you get that me time going, and how do you do that? Naturally, all of this opens up one more layer in Arjuna's mind. And he asks, he asks him a question saying that, look, you've described all of this, Krishna, but the mind is so restless. How do you control it? There's a very famous statement that he makes saying, Chanchalam hi manaha, which means the mind is very chanchal. How do you, it's all good for you, Krishna, you're telling me this, but the mind is so chanchal. How does this work? Now, there's another beauty about the Bhagavad Gita. Some of Arjuna's questions, Krishna answers just in one or two stanzas, and he doesn't spend much time on it. But he's actually setting Arjuna up for the next layer that he would like to ask. So in this particular chapter, there are two times when Arjuna asks Krishna a question. And he asks him a question saying, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna, how do you control this mind which is so chanchal? Is it possible really? He asks him in 33 and 34 saying, it is so. And Krishna explains this very beautifully. And Srini, if you can please bring up slide number 36 for me, verse number 36 for me.
असंयतात्मना योगः दुष्प्राप इति मे मतिः वश्यात्मना तु यततः शक्यो वक्तुमुपायतः.
Right?
अपने मन को अनुशासित किए बिना योग पाना मुश्किल है, परंतु अपने मन को यत्न से अनुशासित करने के उपाय से योग पाना संभव है, ऐसा मेरा मत है.
So here is the very important thing. So when he says Chanchalam hi mana Krishna, how do you actually control it? And Krishna talks about these two beautiful things that we need to do. One is the abhyasa and the other is vairagya. So he says, look, this is something that you need to do daily. It is not something that can happen at one go. So the importance of abhyasa, which is practice, you need to do this on a daily basis. It is not something that you can do on Monday, forget on Tuesday, come back on Wednesday, listen to it on Thursday. It won't work that way. So if you want to control your mind, then you need to do this every day. But you also need to do this from a perspective of vairagya, which is don't get attached to the manifestations of the outcomes that will happen when you take action. So you need to develop this whole ability, O Krishna, O Arjuna, that you have to have this ability to practice and to have non-attachment, abhyasa and vairagya. Naturally, Arjuna, this is setting Arjuna up. Okay, so sometimes the beauty of this dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna is like a dialogue between two great friends. It is a dialogue between two great friends. And he's setting Arjuna up to ask the next set of questions, saying, 1 minute. All this is great. But what happens if I have the faith? I am devoted. I have the faith. But my mind keeps wandering. What happens if I'm not able to stay the course, Krishna? What happens to me? Am I going to be like that tone cloud, which is neither here nor there, and just gets dissipated in the sky? What happens to me? Supposing I have the faith, but my mind is wandering. I'm not staying the course, Krishna. What fate will I meet? Am I going to meet the fate that I'm not going to be very happy about? And here is one of the finest things that Krishna tells us. Srini, verse number 40, please.
भगवानुवाच नैवेह नामुत्र विनाशस्तस्य विद्यते न हि कल्याणकृत् कश्चित् दुर्गतिं तात गच्छति.
Right?
भगवान बोले, अर्जुन, उस पुरुष का न ही इस लोक में न ही परलोक में कोई नुकसान होता है. हे तात, कोई भी शुभ कर्म करने वाला दुर्गति को नहीं प्राप्त होता है.
So here is Krishna's point to all of us, that if you have the faith in yourself, if you were to go ahead performing, you are entitled to move out. I mean, you're entitled to allow your mind to wander. It is perfectly all right. Don't worry about it, but come back. Have that faith that, look, whatever I am doing is something which is going to get me the result that I want. Okay? And this is something so important to us, that, look, you can always keep coming back. You don't have to worry. It's, if you get derailed at some point of time, it's not the end of the world. And this is the beauty of the Gita, because he says, look, it is possible for you to get derailed, but you keep coming back. It's like, it's like when we all decided to quit smoking. The point is that you kept coming back. You kept coming back because the craving was too strong. But then you have two options. One option is that you just give up and continue to keep doing it. Or you keep coming back and saying, let me have the faith in myself and let me continue to go and try and see how to quit. And you will. And then he goes on actually from 41 onwards, from verse 41 onwards in this particular chapter, right up to the end, which is chapter number 4, verse number 47. He goes on to explain to us from another very interesting perspective, that if you do this with proper faith, and when you pass on, you will be reborn in a family, which is a family in which you can continue to do your particular karma. I think sometime back somebody asked this question to us, saying, "Is it what happens? I mean, how does this whole concept of rebirth happen in life?" And this is the point, that if you continue to have faith, and if you continue to pursue your swadharma, and if you continue to do what is the right thing for you to do in life, then even in your next janma, you will continue to be born in a place where you will be able to continue to pursue whatever your swadharma is all about. And then he says that, look, and the last stanza in this is this, that he says, look, when you're doing all of this, have complete faith in me. Do this with a total amount of faith in me. Don't allow anything else to come in your way. Have complete faith in me, the Supreme Lord, and start performing all of this with that conviction, because it is that faith which is the key. It is that faith that is going to go and get you the kind of results that you want to get. And he says, look, have that faith in me, the Supreme Lord. As we explored some time back, we said the Supreme Lord is somebody within you. This is the beauty of the Adi Shankara tradition, which says that there is no external, there is everything internal. So have faith in yourself when you're pursuing this, and that is the only way that you can control your mind, and make sure that your mind is in a place by which those enabling thoughts that come your way will go and work for you, and will start delivering those results that you want to deliver. So he ends this entire stanza by saying this: have faith in the Supreme Lord. Have faith in yourself. Have faith in your ability. Because someone who does that will achieve whatever he or she wants to achieve in life. There is no doubt about that. So here ends the entire sixth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, in which Krishna very clearly tells Arjuna that the key is to have that faith that you require, and it is that faith that will help you get to what you want to get to in life. So ladies and gentlemen, with that, we close this particular chapter. A quick recap of the lessons. Number one, that when you are not, when you're not attached to the fruits of the outcome, you can get what you want. Be in harmony with your inner self. Make sure that your inner self, your Atma, your mind, body, the mind, the senses, the action, the manifestations, the outcomes, all of them are in complete harmony. And that is his entire lesson to us, that if you have this, then you will, and get over this whole business of instant gratification, try and rise above it. Some of these results will take time. Some of these results will happen at that same point of time, but some of these things will take some time to come. And more importantly, create that me time for ourselves. It is so very important. One of the great things that this pandemic has taught all of us is this, that we need to create that me time. I think, somebody actually was, I was listening to another discourse somewhere else when the person actually said, this is not the coronavirus, but this is the Karunavirus. Because this coronavirus has helped us all re-examine what we need in our life, and has given us a huge amount of me time by which you can figure out what is the course that you want to take and how do you want to pursue that particular course. And he very clearly establishes that it is a calm mind that will help you get the happiness that you want. And more importantly, is that to practice that, you need practice and you need non-attachment to calm your mind and keep it going. And it is perfectly all right. If you deviate from this, come back. There is no harm. There is nothing that can happen to anybody who keeps coming back again and again and again onto that path that he or she has chosen to be at. So with that, we close today's chapter, and as usual, we are open to any questions, any experiences, any share. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Those who want to speak can unmute themselves.
Ram, I just have a question on your me time, because the coronavirus has actually been the opposite for many of us who are working from home. So instead of working 8 hours a day, we are now working 14 to 15 hours a day. Also defining me time, do I need to find a spot to sit and relax, or my me time is working out in the gym is me time, taking a run is me time? So wouldn't that also be a me time, because I am de-stressing even when I'm doing these physical activities?
Yeah. See, Jayashree, all that is being suggested is that you take that 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever time, Jayashree, do whatever activity that you want to do in life. Okay, whether it is running, whether it is a gym, whether it is yoga, whether it is a walk, whether it is just sitting down doing nothing, whether it is meditation, anything that works for you, Jayashree. But the tragedy is that, in that time, just this and be very, I think Rajiv used this word some time back. Be very selfish in that me time, Jayashree. Don't allow anybody to interrupt that time. Now, if you're doing a walk, great. If you're doing a gym, great. If you're doing yoga, great. Whatever it is that works for you, Jayashree. But that half an hour, that 45 minutes is completely mine. And but why get into a routine? Because when you get into a routine of doing the same thing, your body will just keep repeating that particular action again and again and again. So if you're going on a run, Jayashree, your body gets used to running, and then it just keeps running and running and running. And that is the time when the mind gets completely free. You can then start focusing on saying, okay, this is what I want to achieve in my life. This is my swadharma. This is my higher purpose. Now let me figure out, am I on goal? Am I on target? Am I not on target? Am I doing what needs to be done? Is there anything else that I can do? Can I course correct? All of this is possible at that time, Jayashree. That's the whole concept of me time. Saying that, look, don't allow, other things to come in at that point. Yeah. That is not me time. That's the only problem. See, the only challenge, there is a gym downstairs in the building where I stay. There are times when I go to that gym, but I go at very odd hours, because then I tell that gym instructor, turn off the music. I don't want anything else to be happening at this point of time. I'm just going to do whatever routine I want to do like that. Yeah.
Ram, can I ask you a question?
Please, sir. Please.
See, in chapter 6, verse 41, Shri Krishna tells that, before we take a rebirth, we remain in Parlok for a very long time. And then, if you have done Swadharma, then you have an opportunity to take birth in a nice family where you can pursue the Swadharma again. So, do you believe that there is a like holding time in Parlok before we take a rebirth?
Possibly, Ashutosh. It's possible. No? See, the whole, the concept, Ashutosh, is moksha. That every one of us is working from a perspective of attaining moksha in life, happiness in life, moving on. So, I think what Krishna is trying to explain to all of us here is this, that if you be fearless when you perform your Swadharma, at all points of time keep performing it. And these are examples that he gives us, Ashutosh. That, if you do happen to, pass on, okay, at a time when you're pursuing your Swadharma and your task is not completed, then it is possible for you to go and spend some time in heaven and then be reborn again in a house which will allow you to continue to pursue your Swadharma. I think that is his whole point. I always maintain that, there are these two aspects that we need to keep in mind. The first is that there is a message that he is conveying to us, and two, there is a way in which he conveys that entire message to us. Okay? So he is conveying this message to Arjuna. Remember this. Always keep in mind that the Bhagavad Gita is a conversation between Arjuna and Krishna. Therefore, he is removing those conditioning issues in Arjuna's mind, saying that, hey, Arjuna, don't worry, because his question is very simple, no, Ashutosh? He says, look, what if I were to fall off that particular path? What happens to me? I mean, will I meet, will I be happy? Will I meet any unfortunate stuff? Will I be like a torn cloud? That is the context of the question, and therefore there is a context to that answer, Ashutosh. That the context there is very clear, saying that, look, don't worry, even if such a thing should happen to you, you will attain some amount of moksha, you will get some amount of heaven time, and then after that you will be reborn. Once you exhaust the accumulated karma that you performed, you will come back. So that is the context in which he is saying. I think we also need to take this into our own context and say that, look, should you do something, should you pursue your Swadharma, and should you fall off the path, then for a certain amount of time, maybe you won't, but then you can always come back and start working on it. That's the context.
Ram, I have a question here.
Please.
Ram, sometimes, see, this entire understanding of Gita, what we've done in these 6 chapters now, is talking about individuals.
Yes.
Sometimes, now when you're running in life, there are things that are done in partnerships. Every relationship itself per se is a partnership. When there are two individuals or two Atmas that were trying to work things out together, there are times that the Swadharma of both may not be the same. So what happens is that I understand that every individual is assessed as per his own Swadharma and his own karma that he does.
Yes.
But sometimes when you have these clashes that happen with our partnerships, it gives rise to a lot of disappointment, and that disappointment tends to derail you or, move you aside.
Yes.
How does one control that?
First of all, Rajiv, I think it's very important, when even in this particular chapter, from verse 29 to 32, he talks about how do you actually deal with people and how do you get the right things to happen. But Rajiv, the problem really is that, whenever we get into a partnership, okay, unfortunately, sometimes it can happen, whether it is a personal relationship or whether it is a professional relationship. We don't specify very clearly, Rajiv. Okay? And therefore, that really creates a lots of trouble for all of us. Okay? In verse number 30, Rajiv, Krishna actually goes on to say, I see a reflection of me in everyone, and hence no one is lesser or greater than me. Okay? That's a very interesting verse that he uses. I see a reflection of me in everyone, and therefore there is nobody who's greater or lesser than me. The point is, Rajiv, at the time of getting into this relationship, is there a reflection of you in the other person or not? Okay. Now, is it possible for us to assess that before? I don't think so. Okay. But if that reflection is not there, no, Rajiv, then it is not possible for us to get into that relationship, especially if it is unfortunately a business relationship. At least in a family relationship, there is something that can be worked out on. But in a business relationship, if that is not happening, then it can lead to disastrous consequences.
Ram, hi, Srini here.
Yes, Srini, tell me.
So when you are on your path to Swadharma and the conflict happens, now what clearly stated is, with your single pointed focus, stay the course and perform your Swadharma.
Yes.
This still comes to a point where I think the enabling plot actually sometimes get impacted or affected. So in such a case, do a course correction is required, or staying the course and just seeing that phase through is what is required? How do we face this thing? I think Rajiv covered in a bit. I think they are related.
Let me give you an example, Srini. Okay. If you look at the river, take a look at the river. What is the Swadharma of the river? It takes birth in some place. I mean, all of us have been to Kurg and we've seen the birth of the, Kaveri and Talakaveri, right? Now, if you see that particular river, it takes birth in a particular place. Now, what is the Swadharma of that particular river? In one way, the ultimate result of that particular river is to go and merge itself with the sea. Okay? On the way, its Swadharma is to go and make sure that it helps so many farmers, it helps so many households with water, it gives them water, it gives, make sure that the farms are irrigated, crops are grown, people are happy. That's the Swadharma of that river. Now what happens is that whenever you find that river hitting an obstacle on the way, what does it do? Initially it tries and destroys that particular, if there is a rock in the way, then it tries and destroys that rock. But if it doesn't, then it says it's no point. Let me work my way around the rock and continue. Because I need to continue to do what I need to do. Okay? I am not going to stop doing something because there's an obstacle in my way. So I'll work my way around that. Likewise, Srini, when you're on this, when you take your own Swadharma, when you take your own higher purpose in life that we talk about, there will be so many obstacles that will come in your way. 100%. And like he also alludes to in this chapter also, that how do you overcome those obstacles? Of course, you need to do a course correction. You can't keep just going on and banging your head against a wall that is not going to break. You need to figure a way out of, either climbing over the wall or going around the wall, or, not every obstacle can be broken down. Not every wall that comes in your way can be broken down. Sometimes maybe it's a good idea for you to walk away from that wall because it's not working. Okay? And that is what he says. But how do you get that happening? He says, calm your mind. Sit down, think about it. That look, am I doing, I'm doing what I'm doing, but is this something that I need to do? Likewise, Srini, again, going back to this example of the river. The river has many tributaries. Likewise, each one of us have different manifestations. There is a family manifestation, there is a career manifestation, there is a social manifestation, there is a society manifestation, there is a personal manifestation, which is my health, my mind, my well-being. There are so many different kinds of manifestations, Srini. All of these are like those tributaries in life. Okay, so you start off and you say, okay, here are so many different ways in which my life is going to get expressed. But at the end of life, like the river, everything comes back and merges into the ocean, which is the final thing. And therefore, this will take different forms. And it is therefore, this harmony that he talks about in this particular chapter is so important. Because if there is no harmony in one aspect of your life, Srini, that is bound to impact the other aspects of your life. I keep telling people, you can't be a great boss, but be a lousy husband. It is not possible. Okay? You are a sum of all the different parts. That's what makes the whole.
I have a question which is related to the previous ones. Can I ask now?
Yes, please, go ahead.
It is not a question. It is basically your thoughts for me to conclude and understand in my mind. The situation is like this. I'm really very overwhelming situation in my mind where there is such a wide discussion between Krishna and Arjuna in the middle of the battlefield with so much of pressures. There are so many warriors standing on both sides. So I want your thoughts on what are the virtues which allowed them to discuss calmly and proceed towards a probable conclusion of thoughts. Why did nobody get agitated, or why did nobody walk off, though they wanted to, from your discussion, what I've understood. So which are the virtues which held them together? Second thing on which I want some idea is that how much is this process of calmness and oneness of thought one of the main reasons for the outcome of Kurukshetra? Am I able to get across? I feel that probably there was a lot of faith between Krishna and Arjuna. And so this faith itself, what is the percentage, or what is this one of the main reasons for the outcome of Kurukshetra?
Right. So the first question, Pankaj, is that they say that, because Krishna was Narayana himself, the Supreme Lord, he is supposed to have cast a web of Maya by which everybody else but Krishna, Arjuna, Sanjaya, Dhritarashtra and Vyasa were frozen in time. Okay? That is why there was, obviously in the middle of a market visit, can't turn around and suddenly say, just 1 minute, guys. Let me come back, right? You can't do that. But so obviously what has happened is that the story goes that, he created this Maya by which everybody just froze in time. Okay. And he got into this entire discourse. And, once the discourse got over and Arjuna says, I will fight, then the fight then the whole battle resumes, Pankaj. Okay. So that is part of that's the story, okay? That's the legend, that's the story that we've been told. Coming back to your second point, yes, of course. The fact that, Krishna set it up in such a way that he chose Arjuna as his, as his implementer. Krishna was the strategist, thinker, Arjuna was the doer, the implementer of the entire action. Shows that he had a tremendous amount of faith in Arjuna and his abilities to actually go and do this entire fight. This is the same thing that happens to all of us, Pankaj. The employees that you work with, whether it is a corporate kind of a situation, whether it is a family kind of a situation, whether it is a social kind of a situation, whatever situation that you feel like. Okay? The fact that everybody has that ability. Now, you as a leader, Pankaj, must have faith in me and my ability to execute something. Okay? But if supposing I'm reporting to you, I'm your employee, or I'm your co-worker, or 41ers Club, I'm part of your board, or whatever it is, right? You must have the faith that I will execute completely to the best of my abilities. You must have the faith, and you must inculcate in me that faith that I can also go ahead and do that. Okay? This interplay, especially this particular chapter, teaches us that very, very importantly. That not only should you have the faith in yourself, you should have that faith in the other person, and that's why he says, I see this reflection of me everywhere. Okay? But you must also empower the other guy, saying, sit down, let's plan, let's think this through, and then go and execute what we need to execute. Okay? And then have faith in me and my ability to execute. Remember, you and I are not alike. You are unique, but I'm also unique. And that's why he says, no, that, in every one of us, there is the same Brahman, which is there. Okay? And he says, there is this Brahma that resides in every one of us. So the way I will express myself, Pankaj, is different from the way you will express yourself. Can you clone me? No, you can't. Can you clone yourself? No, you can't. The world would be such a boring place. Imagine if the whole, if this whole country had 140 crore Pankaj Singhs or 140 crore Ram Sheshus or 140 crore Anurag Mehras, it would have been an extremely boring place to be in. The fact that we have 140 crore different kinds of people makes this world such an interesting place. But let us recognize that within each there is this ability. Let us give that confidence to the people who we are working with, and then allow them to express themselves in their own way. Yeah, that's the whole point that he's trying to tell us.
But Ram, all relationships don't work in the same way, right? Like what I heard a bit of Rajiv and Pankaj. All relationships don't, like Narayana was Narayana. So Arjun actually had a lot of faith in him. So though he argued with him and all, but eventually he did what Krishna told him to do. But among us normal relationships, in terms of on a day-to-day basis with people around us, whether it could be family, whether it could be partnership, whether it could be work, business, anything, everybody actually do not relate with each other in the same way, though they are entangled in relationships today with the way they are. So that's when all the friction starts, and that's when all the differences of opinion start, and that's where all the problems also arise. Then we have to deal with those problems. So first the relationships, then the problems.
So, Reshma, today what is happening to so many of us is that so many of the relationships that we've got into, Reshma, okay, are historical relationships. Now, the challenge that all of us have from this relationship perspective, Reshma, is a very simple one. Now, is this a relationship that is helping you move forward in your life, Reshma? Or is it not a relationship that is helping you move forward in your life? Now, some of these relationships may not be terminable. Okay? The relationship that I have with my father or my mother or my sisters is not terminable. I can't give them up. That relationship is there. However, can I park those relationships aside? Can I park those interactions aside because they are not helping me to get on with what I want to get on with in my life? Okay? So keep asking yourself this question. But then before you do that, okay, before you say, I'm going to park this relationship aside and just keep moving on, ask yourself one very important question. Okay? Have you seen the goodness in them? Despite seeing the goodness in them, is it beyond repair? Okay? Nowhere, you see, this whole point of the Gita, why does he advocate this entire me time? He says this very clearly that, look, for God's sake, sit down, think, what do you need to do, and move with that. Carry people, 100%. Okay, the easiest thing is to break a relationship. But carry people. Try and figure out how can that person, what aspect of that person can be a reflection in life. Remember, when you got into that relationship is because something worked at that time. Okay? So keep looking at it. And if you need to course correct, Reshma, well, that's life. I mean, you just have to do it and move on. Like he told Arjuna, don't look at your grandfather, don't look at your great-grandfather. Okay? Don't look at your guru. He is standing there, he is not helping you in your swadharma. So if it means that you need to go and perform an act by which you have to remove him from the way of your path, then for God's sake, go and do it. See, that is his whole message. I mean, if you recall in chapter 2, we did that. When he clearly says, don't look at him as a grandfather, don't look at him as a guru. He is not there he is coming in the path of you expressing yourself. So, sometimes, well, that's life. What to do? Okay? check, recheck, recalibrate, go back, decide, see what part is still being reflected, what part was being reflected earlier, what part is going to be reflected now, and then move forward. That's the important part, Reshma. Nowhere is he saying that be an acceptance.
What is your question?
So very nicely explained here, Ram. Even something which can be termed as negative has become purposeful and is making us go forward. When you are telling that, you know, if what you explained now, that what is coming in your way of swadharma, you know, you can terminate, which could be a negative word, but it is allowing us to go forward in our purpose. So I like that very much. It's a very, very positive and forward thinking.
The Bhagavad Gita, Pankaj, according to me, is to handle all the toxicity in your life and address it. Okay? The minute, Pankaj, believe me when I'm saying this, I come from a very difficult profession, which is the advertising profession, where, you know, on a daily basis, Pankaj, I can say that now because I'm no longer there, but on a daily basis, it used to be lies, damn lies, and more damn lies, yeah. And you know, it reached a point in my life, Pankaj, I sat down and I was wondering, what am I doing with my life, yeah? You know, outwardly a very happy area chairman, this, that, what about Bombay 26, have fun, great, party animal. But suddenly sitting back there, I was thinking, what am I doing? Hello? Is this what I want to do in my life? And that's when I said, no, yeah, let's get rid of all the toxicity in life. It does make sense.
Actually, Ramji, I wanted to ask you this from last 2 days, that in a relationship, let's say it is you and me, okay?
Yeah.
I feel Ramji, this is what Ramji is. You feel this is what I am. It can be vice versa. But actually, after a point, I see you something very different. So this is my constant dvida within myself. Ki, who is this person and how much have I to trust this person? And what is the part that I need to trust this person? Which is in my mind from last couple of days to ask you, but I said, let me ask you at the right time.
See, Reshma, is very simple. I think we did this in chapter 3, if I'm not wrong, where he very, very clearly we explored this point. You know, people grow, people change. Okay? The point is that when when he says that, can you see a reflection of yourself in somebody else? Are you being honest? And actually, are you seeing that reflection, or are you presuming that there is a reflection of you in me? Okay? Sometimes we take the shortcut, Reshma, and that is something which is disastrous. That we take these shortcuts and start believing that there is a particular reflection. Okay, number one. Number two, people will change. Okay, there is no doubt about the fact that people change. I mean, I know heart of hearts, so many of you sitting there are wondering, saying, where did this fellow become a Gita spouting expert here? Oh, we know him from a completely different, in a completely different avatar, right? So the point is, people will change, Reshma. Okay, so do we have that ability to accept that people will change? Is something that we need to figure out. Okay, and are we going to enjoy that change? Well, yes. You know, I'll give you another example of what I'm saying. You know, when we were young, we have, we play with children of our age. They become great friends, and then, you move on, you go to school, and then, there's another set of friends, and then you go to college, and then there's another set of friends, and then you start working, and then there's another set of friends. Then you get married, there's another set of friends. And each time you keep moving up in life with your experiences, Reshma. Okay? So today, if I were to go back to some of the kids that I played with when I was young, some of them have moved on, some of them have not moved on, some of them are still there, some of them are not there like that. Now, what part of me, at one point of time, there used to be a great reflection between me and that, that person that I used to play marbles with. But now that reflection is not there. So I keep asking people this, whose fault is it? Is it mine or his? He continues to be what he is. So can I go back and become that child again and sit with him and discuss how we used to steal marbles from others and how we used to cheat in the marbles game and enjoy ourselves for that half an hour, 45 minutes and come back to doing what I'm doing. Okay. I think it is this ability to figure out, to recalibrate, which is what he keeps talking about in this entire chapter. That look, recalibrate, get your mind, start focusing, start thinking, go beyond the obvious. That is the important lessons that we learn, Reshma. Okay? So relationships will change, people will change. It is their birthright. And like I have changed, it is every right for people to say, oh my God, how much you've changed. Like I feel people have changed. People have a right to believe that I have changed. So it's not a question of trust, Reshma, anymore. It's a question of saying that, look, are you still in alignment of what I want to achieve in my life? If so, fine. If not, fine. That's also good, Reshma. I keep telling people in the consulting business that whenever I go and approach a prospective client, and if that client were to tell me that, look, I'm sorry, I don't want to do business with you, I really am very happy. I say, Baba, thank you so much. You at least clarified your position in life. I'm not going to keep chasing you for the rest of my life. So a recalibration, Reshma, helps us figure out saying, okay, this person, this relationship, this is what I can do, and this is what I cannot do. That is great help.
Sumitra Gagapati, she has raised her hand since long when the lecture was on.
She's still there.
Sumitra Gagapati.
Gagapati, okay. I don't think she's there.
No, she's here. Please ask your question, Sumitra ji.
She is there.
Don't worry, Anurag, I'll talk to her a little later. She's my aunt.
Okay.
I'm 100% sure it must have been my mistake.
What I would like to, if anybody can elaborate something, this forum is amazing because I feel when somebody asks a question, when somebody else asks a question, I feel very giving. I feel that that person's questions should get answered here. And I feel that, I'm contributing positively from my mind towards that person's well-being or so that they get what they are looking for. And, I wanted you to know that, Ram, that, whenever, is this something, would you like to say something that we should come out and air openly if something is disturbing us or if we have a query in our mind or something which is niggling thought? Because this positive energy, where there is an innate nature in us to help other if they are, getting troubled. So, is there something that you can say this? I felt it right now when somebody else was asking a question.
I think you're so right, and I think I like that lovely observation of yours, Pankaj. First and foremost, I think, we're all old friends. We know each other for a long, long, long time now. So I love it. I think, when Rajiv asks a question, or Srini, or you, or Reshma, or Ashutosh, I think it's very nice that we can build on it, Maybe what we should also do from the next session, and, when you ask me this question now, that gets me to another thought. Maybe from the next session, what we can also do is that somebody else can also share their thoughts on the same issue, and that'll make a nice conversation out here. Okay, so what perhaps we can experiment with Srini next time, Srini and Anurag, is that maybe if there are some of these questions that are there, if you can put it in the chat box. Okay. Then what we can also do is that we can pick those questions up and then open it up for a discussion so that more of us can actually, get involved and contribute, because I can see some fantastic minds out here. Anil Mehra is somebody that I really admire a lot. Renuka is somebody who I admire a lot. Babji is someone that I admire a lot. Vivek Kanakia is here. He's again another fantastic mind. Okay. Ashutosh is a great mind. Ravish is I mean, all of us are great minds. Rahul Nankulir, fantastic mind. So maybe we should try and do that from the next session, Anurag and Srini. So at the beginning of the session, we can say that, look, if there's anybody who has any specific observation or a specific thought, if you can put it in the chat box, okay? You can put it in the chat box to everyone, or maybe Srini, enable the chat so that the question only comes to you or to me or to Anurag, so that we can pick it up and then have a 10-minute discussion on this specific issue, so that more people can then get involved and express themselves. We'll do that, Pankaj. That's a great suggestion. Fantastic. Thank you, buddy.
Yes, so, you wanted to ask question? Okay, Rahulji, please carry
No,
on.
no, Sankalp has put something on the chat, so I guess he's been waiting for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry. What?
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. Ram sir, thank you so much for these enlightening sessions, and really it's a great help for me, because I'm getting a lot of answers automatically, but still there are few which I I feel like asking. So we keep on talking about the goal, our end objective. We have to be focused. We should always have a smart goal. We spoke about that, right? So I sometimes get this duvida that at one point we are saying in chapter 2 verse 47 that we should always do the karmas and do not focus much on the end results. But I see these goals and the end and these targets as my end results. So how do we deal with these two conflicts, without a constant remembrance of my end result or my target? I cannot evaluate my karmas, because I have to keep evaluating them whether I'm on the right course of action to achieve these end results.
Wonderful. I think that's a great question. So Sankalp, let's say I'm building a house. Okay? I've gone to the best architect in the business, and that architect has given me a beautiful plan. I think this is how your house is going to look. Okay? This is your ground floor, this is your parking, this is your garden, this is that, this is that, this is that. The whole house is drawn in front of me, right? And he gives me this thing. Now it's going to take me 15 months or 18 months to complete the construction of my house. So what is the end result? End result is obviously I'm going to perform a Griha Pravesham, and as the architect has promised me, I'm going to be sleeping in my dream bedroom, with that lovely panel in front of me, which is, an M.F. Hussain painting, and, with that, whatever. That's the end thing that I want. I mean, I want to invite all of you to my house. All of you are going to come to my house and say, "Kya ghar banaya yaar, Ram Shishu banaya, kya ghar banaya, boss, fantastic ghar banaya," right? Now here comes the challenge. It's 18 months away. Now today I need to excavate the earth. Okay? Can I hasten that process because I want that house to be built in 12 months? No. If I'm going to build that wall, the curing of that wall will take its time, no, Sankar? I need to cure that wall properly. If I'm going to tell that mason or the mestri or whatever it is saying, "Mere ko pata nahi, tu mere ko 10 din mein bana ke de, mere ko bedroom mein sona hai." Is it possible for you to do that? It is not, right? So the whole point is this, that there is this target that you've got. What is the target for this year? I'm going to do 1 crore of business, or 10 crores of business, or 100 crores of business, or 1,000 crores of business, or 10,000 crores of business, or whatever it is that you want to do in whatever your business is capable of doing. Now, that is a target which is very, very important. There's no question about it. Can you just call the mason and the architect and say, "Kuch bhi bana de yaar, mere ko ek ghar bana de"? Can you do that? Obviously, you can't do that. No? You've got to have a plan. You've got to tell that guy, "Bhai, aise 3 room honge, अच्छे room honge, 8 room honge, kitchen hoga, drawing room idhar hoga, whatever." You can't tell that guy, "Kuch bhi bana de yaar," isn't it? It's not possible. Likewise, can you call your whole team and say, "Kuch bhi sales kar do yaar, ye saal chalega"? Not possible. No? So you need to have that. Okay, boss, this year we are going to do 1,000 crores turnover.
Yeah, you're right.
You definitely, without that, you can't move, no? Now that you've got that turnover target that you put down saying 1,000 crore mere ko banana hai. Yeah, if you're saying, look, in the next 18 months, I need my house to be ready. Okay? Now, can you please come down to that step for today that needs to be done? And can you focus on that today's step? Okay? Because if you take 365 steps, then at the 365th step, you will reach 1,000 crores. Right?
Right. Yeah.
So if you're going to say, okay, on the 364th day, I'm going to do some magic and I will get 1,000 crores, is it possible?
No, it's not.
It's not possible. Right? So if you don't do that step number 1 today, if you don't do step number 2 tomorrow, if you don't do step number 3 tomorrow, day after tomorrow, if you don't do, you have to take those daily steps so that you can reach that 1,000 crores on the 365th day. Maybe 364th, maybe 363rd. Okay? If you've been very bad in planning, maybe on the 300th. Okay?
Right. So
It is
how?
every day that you do, that is the important part. And that is the whole point of this message, saying that, look, take those daily steps. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay?
Yeah. So how I see this now is that, the verse says karmanyeva adhikaraste. So it has an inherent, property that you should have an end target, and the task and the targets will go hand in hand. So it's not like that, leave the end result to me and you just do your job. So you have to have that plan of action in your hand. Then only you can, execute it.
It's
Am I
like
right?
It's like praying to God, saying, भगवान मेरे को एक लॉटरी दिला दे यार. तो भगवान बोलते अरे भैया जाके लॉटरी टिकट तो खरीदो. तुम अगर टिकट भी नहीं खरीदोगे तो तुमको लॉटरी कहाँ से मिलेगी यार?
Right.
भगवान के ऊपर सब छोड़ देने से कुछ नहीं होने वाला है ना. That's what he tells us, no, in chapter 3, saying that don't leave everything to me, यार. Don't become a sannyasi. नहीं होने वाला. You have to do your कर्म. कर्म तो करना पड़ेगा आपको. See, the meaning of that verse is very clear. He said, don't think that. Can you imagine the job of that poor guy sitting up there? If 140 crore Indians say कि भगवान आपके भरोसे पे हम छोड़ दिए पूरा. I mean, in a lighter way, वो पागल हो जाएगा यार. I mean, can you imagine the maximum supercomputer that poor guy has to say, अच्छा संकल्प को ये चाहिए 1000 crore, ठीक है इसको दे देंगे. राम शिशु को ये चाहिए, अच्छा ठीक है ये दे देंगे. पंकज सिंह, can you imagine the poor guy? You will have to have another 140 crore people working with him to get this done. So you can't leave it to God, no?
Right. So this query was there when we discussed, chapter 2, but it's good that you also spoke about end results and targets today. So I thought it's right time to ask. And second question, sir, out of this today's discussion, in verse 36, we say that, we have to have a complete discipline and balance in the mind and the heart to achieve the yoga. If it is not there, the word which is used is dushprapya. So which means he says it is tough to get, right? It is tough to achieve. Why he's not saying here that it is impossible to achieve? So it's a little, curious I am about this, because the choice of word is very different here. Dushprapya, he's not saying impossible. So which means it is still achievable even if you are not disciplined, right?
Because you have to have abhyasa and vairagya. If you have abhyasa and vairagya, then you will achieve what you want to achieve. But that abhyasa is most important. Okay? That's why he says it is not impossible to achieve. It is possible. But then you have to have, so it starts with abhyasa. Okay? Yeah. And then he says, okay, when you're doing your abhyasa, do the abhyasa from a vairagya perspective. So that daily practice, that daily step that you have to take, my friend, do it. It is not impossible to achieve what you want to achieve. You will 100% achieve what you want to achieve. But for God's sake, do this every day. Every day you need to do that abhyasa with the spirit of vairagya. That is his whole point.
Right. No. So my point is a little different, sir. My point is, he says that even if you don't, if you don't have this, it is not impossible. So even if you don't have abhyasa and vairagya, it is dushprapya.
Which is why he says have faith. Therefore he gets into the higher point which says have faith. If you have the faith, then don't worry, you will not fall off the path.
Yeah, asanyamatmana yogo dushprap iti te mati. So
that's why he says you must have the faith that you will achieve. Don't worry. So long as you have that faith, you can keep coming back. Don't bother. Okay?
Yeah. So faith is first, abhyasa and vairagya becomes secondary then in that case.
That's what Arjuna's question is, that what happens? And he says, look, don't worry. So long as you have that faith, nothing will happen. No? Don't bother about it.
Look, thank you so much, sir.
All right. Shall we then
we wrap up.
wrap up today, Anurag and Srini?
Yes.
Can we?
Thank you, Ram.
Fantastic. So let's invoke the blessings of the Lord again. And
Thank you, Ram, for this wonderful session as usual. Mesmerizing session.
tomorrow we move actually into another very interesting realm, you know.
Yes.
Tomorrow onwards, the entire discussion actually changes course. You see, because by now Arjuna and his questioning have reached a certain stage, you know. And from now, you know, he says, okay, fine, all this is great, but now can I know you? Okay, so from tomorrow onwards, there's a lot about divinity, about supreme being, about God. Till now, Arjuna is just talked about, you know, yourself, action. From now onwards, he gets into his godhood, you know, saying what is divinity and what are the various manifestations of divinity. It's very, very, from 6 to 12. It's a very interesting journey into, you know, how you can see divinity everywhere. You know, where all do you see divinity? What are the qualities of divinity? So it's a very interesting.
Thank you, Ram.
We see tomorrow morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ramji. Thank you. तुम लोग के साथ ही चला